Hey folks, my name's Gary Daly and I am America's Deck Builder. Welcome to segment 2 of the I.Dekk installation series. If you haven't seen the first segment, I'd like you to go back and watch that before you watch this one, because we're going to be talking about some advanced installation techniques here, and you need the basics before you get here. So specifically today, we're going to be talking about these two products, these two profiles of I.Dekk. This is a feature strip which will allow us to build long decks without having butt joints. And this is our perimeter strip, which is going to allow us to picture frame in complementary colors or using the same color. Okay, in preparation for installation of a picture frame or a perimeter strip, we have to prepare the structure. And there are a couple of things that we need to do along the way. The first of which is we have to think about how our decking is going to be laid out. If we have a perimeter strip or a picture frame around the outside of the deck, well, our decking isn't going to go all the way across, so we can't fasten it out here. Now we have to fasten it inside. And as you can see, we put horizontal flat blocking between the joists on the front of the deck, and because we have this triple joist here, that's going to accommodate the sides. Now, if we run this picture frame or perimeter strip all the way around, you can see that we have plenty of room to drive screws down and attach our decking, whether we run it at a 45 or perpendicular to the joists. Okay, we've got our structure complete. We've inserted all of our blocking to support our deck boards, and we're ready to start laying out decking. Now, we're going to lay this in a 45, and so we have to establish a starting point. So what I've done is I've measured back from the corner 36 inches in each direction and marked it. And in order to hold my chalk line, I put a little notch here with my box cutter. So I'm going to bring the string into that notch, across to that mark, snap a line. We've now got a starting point at a true 45. Okay, we've established our 45-degree angle. It's a true 45, 36 back from each side. There's two more really important measurements and considerations to laying out this decking, considering that we're going to be laying down a perimeter strip. We have to make sure that we don't fall short when we install this stuff and end up with gaps that don't go completely under the perimeter board. So what I've done is I've measured back 3 1/4 from each side and snapped lines. That will allow me 1 7/16 overhang, which is 7/16 for the trim board and 1 inch full overhang beyond that, and still get coverage. Each of these boards will be covered under this. So what I need to do is make sure that the end of each board is outside those perimeter lines before I install it, and then I can cut it back, and everything will be underneath the perimeter board. Another consideration is that we have to have 3/16 gap to allow for expansion and contraction between that cut and this edge. Okay, we've got all of our marks. We know where all the decking is going. So now I want to talk a bit about installation. So I've cut some boards to length in preparation for this step. And what we're going to do is we're going to install this first board on our diagonal chalk line. And I'm going to take a screw and attach it at each end just inside my blue line. And what that's going to do is it's going to put a screw there that'll hold the board in place while I fasten the field or the inside of the board. And that screw eventually, after I cut it, is going to be under the lip of our perimeter strip. So after I do that, I'm going to pull each successive board in. And while we use 2 1/2 inch screws here, when we're working backwards towards a corner like this, we can use shorter screws down in the lip here. As long as we don't overdrive them, and in a limited capacity, we can do that. So that's what we're going to do. So I started with my original 45-degree line, and I've worked back toward the corner and installed all the decking. Now I have to figure out exactly where my cuts are going to be so that it falls under the perimeter strip. So I'm going to use my spacer bar, my gap bar, and I'm going to line it up with my mark over there, and I'm going to line it up with my mark over here. And I'm going to strike a line. That's my cut line. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And then I'm going to run my circular saw and get rid of the waste. And now I could do the other side, or I could lay out the whole deck, which is it's usually the way that I like to do it. I'll lay out the whole deck and then snap lines. And that way you're sure of a nice plane all the way across the deck, rather than just doing it a piece at a time. Okay, I've gone ahead, laid a bunch of decking out, snapped my perimeter cut lines, and I'm just about ready to cut. But I want you guys to make sure that when you're going to cut those perimeters, that you don't set this depth any deeper than the decking itself. Otherwise, you're going to chop your structure up. So I usually try to go just a 1/16 deeper so that I don't have to cut it off later, and it's just going to cut a little groove in the structure. But with the lines snapped and the depth set, we're ready to chop this up. Okay, we've cut our perimeter lines. Now we're getting ready to install the perimeter strip. So we've cut a couple scrap pieces just so we could get a good measure, make sure everything is laid out right. One thing I want to remind you of is to maintain a 3/16 inch gap between our perimeter cut and the underside of our perimeter board. So we're going to go ahead and lay this in. I'm going to bring it in tight against the corner, and then I'm going to pull it out 3/16. Then, with this there, I can get a good measure from my far corner to this corner on the actual length of the perimeter board that I need to cut. Okay, we've cut our perimeter lines, we've got all the decking laid out, so the last thing we need to do now is install our perimeter boards. I've measured them, I've cut some nice tight 45s, and basically I just want to talk about how we're going to install it right now. For the finish, we're going to install screws straight down through. If we can get screws in 2 channels, it's going to give us a little bit more leverage to hold it down tight. One thing we don't want to do is drive a screw down through the wing. And also, as we're placing our perimeter board, our perimeter strip, we have to maintain that 3/16 gap for expansion and contraction. Okay, with our perimeter strip in place, now it's time to talk about where we're going to change direction with our decking. As you know, we ran the decking on that section of the deck diagonally at a 45-degree angle. Over here, we're going to run straight across the joist at a 90. Where the diagonal meets the perpendicular, that's where we're going to use our feature strip. And you can see this accommodates decking coming in on both sides, and just like with the perimeter strip, we want to maintain a 3/16 gap between our cuts and the inside of the strip here. So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to take some boards, run them parallel, start underneath our perimeter strip here, run them over, and cut them short so we can drop this in on top, drive some screws down in the center. Our decking can expand and contract underneath the legs, and we have a beautiful finish. One of the things that we're going to do here is this is going to be a continuation of our perimeter strip. So we're going to have one solid line all the way to the wall. Okay, I've got my feature strip cut to length. I'm about to drop it in, and we're going to see all these uneven cuts disappear. We're going to make it beautiful. Set it in, screw it down, and we're done. One of the really great things about I.Dekk, its composition, the many profiles, the color palette, is the limitless possibilities for creativity. You can create inlays, border patterns, anything your mind can come up with, you can do it with I.Dekk. So let your imagination run wild and send us some pictures of your finished work. For I.Dekk, I'm Gary Daly, and I am America's Deck Builder.